Luna had always believed in the permanence of love. She had grown up on fairy tales, on whispered promises of forever, on the soft certainty that marriage was unbreakable. When she met Kale, the alpha, she thought her world had finally aligned with that dream. He was magnetic, dangerous, and utterly commanding, but there was a warmth in his rare smiles that made her heart obey him without question. Their courtship was like a storm. It swept through her life with the force of inevitability, leaving her breathless and aching for more. He noticed her everywhere, from the gentle sway of her hair to the way she laughed with abandon. Luna had been careful all her life, but Kale made caution feel irrelevant. With every look, every touch, he carved a place in her soul that felt permanent. The day they married, the full moon hung low over the forest, bathing everything in silver light. Wolves prowled the edges, their eyes glinting like scattered stars. She had thought the symbolism romantic, a testament to the bond they shared, but that night the forest seemed too alive, as if it were watching, judging. Kale held her hand in a grip that was both tender and absolute. He whispered vows that sounded eternal, yet even as he spoke them, Luna could feel an undercurrent she could not name. The honeymoon began with fire and desire. Kale's presence was intoxicating, his dominance thrilling, yet even in those intimate moments, Luna sensed a subtle tension beneath the passion. He demanded her attention, her obedience, and at first, she thought it was an expression of love. But as the days passed, small cracks appeared. Her choices, once celebrated, became questioned. Her friends, once welcome, were quietly dismissed. Her opinions, once heard, were now weighed against Kale's singular authority. Started with whispers, a suggestion from him that she should focus solely on their bond, a gentle insistence that she stay home rather than attend a family gathering. Then came commands veiled as advice, each one eroding her autonomy like water wearing down stone. Luna, ever trusting, obeyed, believing that love required compromise. She did not see the shadow creeping across the foundation of their marriage. Her family noticed the changes first. Her mother's eyes, wide with concern, asked questions Luna tried to brush off. "He's just protective," she said. "He loves me fiercely." And Kale did love her, but it was a love colored with ownership, with the need to dominate every corner of her existence. The forest, which had seemed magical on their wedding night, became a mirror to the tension in her life. Wolves circled the edges of their home, their calls echoing like warnings. Kale, ever attuned to his pack, took their growls seriously, claiming that they were threats, that danger lurked outside of their bond. Luna began to feel trapped in a gilded cage, the beauty around her tainted by the creeping reality of control. Then came the night she realized forever might not exist. It was a night like any other, moon bright and silver, casting shadows across their home. Kale returned from a hunt, triumphant, bringing with him the scent of the wild and a promise of dominance. He wanted everything, Luna realized, not just her body but her decisions, her very thoughts. And when she hesitated, when she questioned, he became cold. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now burned with a feral intensity. Luna's heart, so full of love and trust, began to fracture. She tried to speak, tried to express herself, but words faltered under the weight of his authority. She realized that she had believed in a fairy tale that did not exist. The marriage she thought would be her sanctuary had turned into a battlefield, and the battlefield had rules she had never agreed to. It was then she met Aiden, a healer of sorts, though not of wounds visible to the eye. He offered listening ears, understanding, and the freedom to speak without fear. Luna felt a spark she hadn't known since before Kale. It was confusing, dangerous, and intoxicating. She knew that any feeling for Aiden would be forbidden, yet forbidden had become her secret desire, a reminder that she was still her own person. Kale noticed the shift immediately. Wolves are perceptive to disruption in their pack, and he had trained himself to sense Luna's slightest deviation. His confrontations were subtle at first, questions masked as concern, touches that lingered too long, words loaded with meaning. Luna's heart raced. caught between fear, loyalty, and a burgeoning need for autonomy she had almost forgotten existed. The tension reached a peak when Kale demanded a ritual of loyalty, a public demonstration of Luna's obedience to him alone. In front of the pack, under the silvered eyes of the moon, he asked her to declare her life belonged solely to him. Luna's mind screamed, but her lips trembled with the words. And yet, somewhere deep within, a spark of defiance ignited. In that instant she understood the truth. Forever, as she had imagined it, was an illusion. Love could be fierce, passionate, and intoxicating, but when mingled with ownership, it turned to ash. Kale's love was not freedom. It was a cage. And for the first time, Luna felt the raw, frightening desire to break free. The decision came quietly, like the first whispers of dawn after a long night. She began to reclaim herself in small ways, asserting her opinions, venturing outside without permission, speaking her mind despite the weight of his gaze. Every act was a rebellion, a crack in the edifice of Kale's control. Wolves howled in the distance as if echoing her awakening. Kale's fury was inevitable. He could not comprehend her defiance, nor could he tolerate it. The pack sensed the conflict, the tremor in the alpha's authority, and chaos began to stir. Luna, now fully aware of the danger surrounding her, knew that escape required courage, precision, and perhaps a betrayal of the one she had once thought untouchable. And then came the night of the hunt. Kale's rage had grown unchecked, his dominance a storm ready to consume everything in its path. Luna, guided by instinct and her newfound clarity, slipped away into the forest, past the very wolves trained to obey Kale. Aiden waited at the edge, carrying not just care but a plan for her survival. The night was alive with tension, the moon casting their shadows across the undergrowth like specters of freedom and captivity intertwined. She ran, heart pounding, lungs burning, but with each step, she shed the illusions of a marriage that had never belonged to her. Kale's howls echoed behind her, a mixture of fury, grief, and disbelief. Luna realized that love could be powerful, but only if it did not demand surrender of the self. Only then could it endure. By the time dawn broke, painting the forest in shades of gold and pink, Luna had found a new beginning. The ashes of her past smoldered quietly behind her, reminders of a love that had turned destructive. She would carry the memories, the heartbreak, and the lessons, but she would no longer be defined by them. In the light of morning, with Aiden at her side, Luna understood the truth she had sought for so long. Forever is not given. It is earned, nurtured, and respected. And above all, it begins with oneself. Luna's new life began in the quiet edges of the forest, far from the suffocating authority of Kale and the pack he commanded. She moved like a shadow through the early mornings, learning the rhythms of the wild not as a member of a hierarchy, but as a free spirit. Every breath of cold air was liberation. Every crack of twig beneath her feet was a declaration of autonomy. Yet the forest did not forgive naivety, and freedom came with a price. Aiden guided her carefully, teaching her how to forage, how to anticipate the subtle dangers that lurked even in sanctuary. But it was not only survival skills he offered. He gave her validation, conversation, laughter, a sense that she could reclaim the parts of herself Kale had tried to erase. In his eyes, she saw a reflection of strength she had forgotten existed, and it both exhilarated and terrified her. Luna realized that desire could be dangerous, not merely because of Kale, but because it reminded her of all she had been denied. Yet the shadows of the past were never far behind. Kale did not forgive easily, nor did he accept challenge to his authority. The pack had shifted in his absence. Some followed him blindly, others hesitated, sensing cracks in the once absolute alpha. Rumors of her escape spread like wildfire. Wolves from the fringes, hungry for chaos, began to prowl, testing her resolve, testing Aiden's loyalty, testing the fragile fortress she was building from the ashes of her old life. One night, as the moon rose swollen and silver, Kale appeared at the edge of her new territory. The wind carried the scent of his dominance even before she saw him. Her heart leapt, not with love, but with a surge of survival instinct. She had escaped him once. She would not allow him to reclaim her. But he was no ordinary man, and the forest seemed to hold its breath as the two of them faced each other in the clearing. "You thought you could leave," he said, voice low, almost reverent, yet threaded with rage. "You thought forever meant nothing." Luna's pulse quickened, but she stood tall, the lessons of the past months etched into her posture. "Forever isn't yours to claim," she replied. "It's something I decide for myself." Cale's amber eyes narrowed. "You cannot survive without me," he said. "I am your strength, your protection, your destiny." "And I am my own," Luna shot back, the words tasting like fire on her tongue. "I am not yours to control, to bend, to claim." The confrontation escalated swiftly. Wolves emerged from the tree line, circling, snarling, uncertain of which alpha they should follow. Cale's aura of command was intoxicating, terrifying, and yet Luna no longer trembled in its presence. Aiden moved beside her, steady and calm, a shield not just of muscle, but of loyalty. Luna realized that confrontation was inevitable, and that the survival she had rebuilt depended on strength. Her strength, not his. The fight was brutal, a storm of claws, teeth, and raw emotion. Cale's fury clashed with Luna's resolve, and for every step forward he took, she pushed back, fueled by the memory of every moment he had tried to dominate her. Aiden was a constant presence, countering threats and creating openings, but Luna's own instincts, honed in months of training and self-discovery, proved that she was no longer the naive bride who had believed forever was a guarantee. The battle ended not with death, but with a recognition. Cale, panting, bleeding from minor wounds, realized that control was an illusion. Luna would not return to the cage of his making. The forest itself seemed to claim her as its own, the moonlight bathing her in a spectral glow of resilience and independence. He retreated, leaving behind a pack fractured, a bond broken, and a lesson he could not teach. In the quiet aftermath, Luna felt a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. The man she had loved, the alpha who had once been everything, was gone, not defeated, but diminished in his need to dominate. Aiden stood close, his hand brushing hers, a silent acknowledgement of shared survival. There was danger yet, always danger, but Luna understood that freedom carried risks she was willing to face. Days passed, and the forest's rhythm became her guide. She honed her senses, tracking, foraging, moving with precision and purpose. The wolves, initially wary, began to respect her presence. Not because of fear, but because she exuded a quiet authority rooted in understanding rather than domination. She realized that true power was not control over others, but mastery over oneself. The memory of Cale haunted her still. Some nights, she would wake to the echo of his voice, to the ache of a love that had been twisted into possession. But the ache no longer defined her. It was a lesson etched deep into her being, a reminder that love without respect is not love at all. Aiden's presence became a steady counterbalance. He never commanded, never demanded. He suggested, guided, and protected. Luna discovered the intoxicating relief of being seen as an equal, of being trusted with decisions large and small. Slowly, she allowed herself to laugh, to hope, to imagine a future shaped by her own choices. Yet controversy lingered. When the pack realized Luna had survived, thrived even without Cale, whispers grew. Some claimed she had been foolish to defy him, that a woman could not escape an alpha unscathed. Others admired her audacity, her courage, the way she had carved a life from the ruins of control. And Luna understood that the world would always judge, would always question the choices of a woman who dared to say no to forever under someone else's terms. Freedom, she learned, was not passive. It required vigilance, courage, and sometimes sacrifice. She discovered that love could exist without chains, that desire could be passionate without submission. And she learned that the most dangerous men were not the ones with fangs or claws, but those who demanded possession of a heart that was not theirs to claim. Months passed. Luna's life evolved into a delicate balance of adventure and security. She traveled further into the wilderness, explored hidden streams, scaled cliffs that overlooked endless forests, and always returned to the quiet sanctuary she shared with Aiden. She was not the same woman who had walked into marriage with naive faith. She was stronger, sharper, untamed in a way Cale could never understand. But life has a way of testing resolve. One evening, as a crimson sunset bled across the horizon, a figure emerged from the shadows. A stranger, yet with unmistakable alpha energy. Luna's instincts flared. She prepared for confrontation, yet curiosity pricked at her. Who dared challenge her in her sanctuary? What threat lurked at the edge of her freedom? The stranger revealed himself not with hostility, but with knowledge of Cale, his schemes, and the fractures in the pack. He spoke of power, politics, and alliances, showing Luna a world beyond her immediate survival. Her mind raced. Could she navigate this dangerous new world without losing herself? Could she balance freedom with the inevitable pull of the supernatural hierarchy around her? Luna realized that the story of her life was no longer simply about escape or revenge. It was about mastery, about understanding the forces around her without succumbing to them. Cale had been a chapter, fierce and fiery, but her life was now an unwritten manuscript, and she held the pen. The forest whispered around her as she made a decision. She would not hide. She would not bend. She would confront, navigate, and rise. Not as a bride, not as a captive, but as a woman whose choices were her own. Love, danger, desire. They could exist together, but only if she dictated the terms. And for the first time, Luna felt the intoxicating thrill of true sovereignty over her heart, her body, and her destiny. The nights were no longer haunted by Cale alone. Though his shadow lingered, it had been tempered by Luna's awakening. Yet danger has a way of finding those who defy it. A series of strange events unsettled the forest. Wolves missing, packs shifting, strange markings carved into trees. Luna sensed movement beyond her perception, a web of politics and power she had once ignored but could no longer afford to. Aiden stayed close, ever a calm presence, yet she could see the tension etched into his jaw. He understood that survival was no longer just about escaping Cale. It was about staying alive in a world that demanded obedience from everyone. It was a hunter first, human but reckless, encroaching into the forest, disturbing the delicate balance of life. Luna intercepted him with words and presence alone. Her authority silent but undeniable. He recoiled, uneasy before her, and in that moment she felt the intoxicating strength of her own power. Freedom was not passive. Freedom demanded courage, cunning, and sometimes ferocity that rivaled the beasts themselves. But Cale's influence still reached beyond her immediate sight. Wolves loyal to him appeared in the edges of the clearing, their eyes filled with expectation, confusion, and defiance. They sought the familiar, the unquestionable rule of an alpha who had once defined their lives. Luna knew that she could not simply repel them with words. She needed strategy, cunning, and the willingness to face the storm Cale's absence had left behind. The first direct encounter came one moonless night. Wolves encircled her, silent and tense. Luna felt the primal tension, her instincts sharpening like blades. Cale's voice echoed in her mind, or perhaps it was the memory of him. The command, the dominance, the overwhelming presence that had once terrified her into compliance. But she was no longer that woman. She stepped into the center of the clearing, eyes meeting those of the largest wolf, and felt a surge of pure, unrelenting confidence. "You follow him," she said softly, almost a whisper, yet it carried through the stillness like a bell. "I am no one's possession." The alpha wolf hesitated, confusion rippling through the pack. Luna continued, her voice steady, her posture unyielding. "I command nothing because I demand nothing from you except respect. You may leave. Or you may stay. But your loyalty will no longer be defined by fear." The forest held its breath. And slowly, imperceptibly, the pack began to shift, understanding a new order rooted not in fear, but in clarity. It was subtle, revolutionary. Luna realized that she could lead without domination, could command without cruelty. And in that revelation, a spark of exhilaration ignited within her chest. Cale, of course, did not accept this quietly. Weeks later he returned, more calculated, more intense. his presence like a storm breaking over a fragile village. He brought with him a faction of wolves loyal to him, trained, disciplined, each movement calculated to remind Luna that escape was an illusion. Yet she did not flinch. She had trained, observed, and learned, and the forest itself seemed to shield her. Aiden stayed close, his calm a grounding force, a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. "You defy me," Kale said, voice low, dangerous. "You betray what was ours." "I betray only what tried to enslave me," Luna replied. "Love is not ownership. You still don't understand." Kale's rage manifested in a sudden, violent attempt to reclaim control. Wolves leapt, shadows collided, and the night exploded with chaos. Luna moved like water, precise, deliberate, unstoppable. Aiden's interventions were critical, yet she realized that her strength had become her own, not borrowed, not dependent on anyone. She could think, decide, and act independently. She was no longer the frightened bride who had believed in forever without question. The battle was brutal, yet finite. Kale's retreat was inevitable. His pride and control unable to accommodate the emergence of a woman who refused to submit. Wolves fled or reoriented, the forest settling back into a rhythm that acknowledged Luna as a force to be reckoned with. She had survived. She had thrived. And for the first time, she felt the intoxicating clarity of sovereignty. Days turned into weeks, and Luna's reputation grew among nearby packs. Whispers of her defiance spread, some in admiration, others in cautionary tones. She became a symbol, not of rebellion against love, but of the radical idea that love should never be a cage. Aiden remained at her side, steadfast, offering partnership without demands, desire without chains. And in him, she discovered that connection could be passionate, fulfilling, and unshackled. A new kind of forever she had never imagined before Kale. Yet controversy continued to swirl. Local packs, those not bound by Luna's moral compass, questioned her choices. How could a woman escape an alpha's dominance and survive? Was she reckless, foolish, or dangerously empowered? The stories took on a life of their own, each telling shaping her legacy in ways she could not control. She did not try. She simply lived, letting her actions define her, letting her courage speak louder than gossip. Luna also began to explore the deeper mysteries of her world. There were secrets of the forest, ancient rites, powers that went beyond mere strength or dominance. She trained, studied, and adapted, realizing that true independence required more than survival. It required understanding, awareness, and the ability to navigate forces that often went unseen. Kale became a distant, though haunting, memory. Sometimes, in rare quiet moments, she wondered if he still thought of her, if he still believed he could reclaim what he had lost. But those thoughts were fleeting, quickly replaced by the exhilaration of choice, of freedom, of living on her own terms. Every sunrise reminded her that she had escaped more than a man. She had escaped a life defined by submission and fear. Freedom, she discovered, was not simple or peaceful. It demanded vigilance, courage, and constant self-assertion. But it was worth every fear, every danger, every challenge. Luna's love for herself became the cornerstone of her existence, a force stronger than any alpha's dominance, more enduring than any moonlit vow. As the seasons shifted, Luna realized she had built something rare. A life shaped not by someone else's power, but by her own choices, guided by love that did not demand surrender. She could laugh, she could explore, she could desire without losing herself. And she understood the truth she had always sought. Forever is only real when it begins within. The forest had grown quiet in the aftermath of Kale's retreat, but Luna knew that silence is never permanent. Shadows moved along the edges of her territory. Wolves from distant packs, curious, cautious, or opportunistic. She had learned to read the subtlest signs. The twitch of an ear, the flick of a tail, the barely audible growl that spoke of tension, aggression, or allegiance. Survival was no longer instinct alone. It was awareness, strategy, and a courage forged in months of danger. Aiden remained at her side, a steadying force, but even he could not shield her from everything. They discovered tracks one evening, far larger than any ordinary wolf, markings in the mud that hinted at a predator both intelligent and dangerous. Luna followed them cautiously, the memory of Kale's dominance sharpening her instincts. She had escaped one storm, but the world contained many, and each required careful navigation. The arrival of the stranger, Varek, a rival alpha with ambition and cruelty, shifted the balance of the forest instantly. He was not Kale. His methods were subtler, his cruelty calculated. He spoke of alliances, power, and dominance, offering protection in exchange for obedience, tempting Luna with promises designed to exploit fear. Yet she had learned her lessons. No deal, no bond, no declaration would compromise her autonomy. "You think you are ready to lead," Varek said one night, eyes gleaming with predatory calculation. "But leadership demands submission to something greater than yourself." "I submit to nothing that seeks to enslave," Luna replied, her voice unwavering, body tense yet graceful. "Leadership is earned, not demanded." The tension was electric. Wolves shifted nervously around them, sensing the clash of wills. Varek's presence was a test, not only of strength but of resolve. He was a man who could manipulate the pack without striking a single blow, and yet Luna remained unflinching. Aiden's hand on her shoulder was grounding, a reminder that alliances could be chosen freely, not forced. The following weeks were a series of maneuvers, skirmishes, and confrontations. Luna discovered a side of herself she had never known, a combination of ferocity and diplomacy, intuition and logic. She learned that defiance alone was not enough. Survival required skill, awareness, and the willingness to act decisively. Wolves challenged her authority, others tested her patience, and Varek's whispers of temptation and power crept like shadows through the edges of her mind. One night, during a rare confrontation, Varek cornered her in the forest's darkest depths. He spoke with calm menace, confident that fear would sway her. "You cannot escape the world," he said. "It will always demand obedience, one way or another. Even Kale could not survive without control, and neither can you." "I am not Kale," Luna said sharply. "I am not you. I am myself, and I will decide what power looks like in my life." The battle was subtle but intense, more mental than physical, a contest of wills. Luna maneuvered the forest's terrain to her advantage, using her knowledge of the land, her connection to the wolves, and her own instincts. By dawn, Varek had retreated, grudgingly acknowledging her strength and independence. Yet the ordeal left her shaken, a reminder that freedom was not a state but a constant struggle. The forest, the pack, and the men who sought dominance were all part of a world that would test her repeatedly. Luna realized that autonomy was a living thing, fragile yet fiercely resilient, and it demanded vigilance at all times. In quieter moments, she allowed herself reflection. She remembered the girl who had believed in forever, who had walked willingly into Kale's dominance. That Luna was gone, replaced by a woman who understood the value of self-determination, who knew that love could be passionate without possession. She could desire, she could connect, she could love, but never again at the cost of her freedom. Aiden remained her constant companion, but their relationship was unlike any she had known before. He did not demand, did not control, and he never treated love as ownership. They moved together through the forest, exploring, training, learning, and laughing in ways Luna had not imagined possible. Their connection was real because it was chosen freely, a bond forged through respect rather than coercion. The controversies surrounding her choices did not cease. Rumors spread, whispered judgments reached distant packs, and the story of the defiant woman who escaped Kale became a legend. Some condemned her bravery as folly. Others celebrated it as an unprecedented assertion of female autonomy. Luna did not concern herself with opinions. She measured herself by her choices, her courage, and her ability to protect the life she had built. As months turned to seasons, Luna discovered new layers of her own power. She learned to influence the pack subtly, to guide rather than command, to inspire loyalty without demanding it. Wolves followed her not out of fear but because they sensed her competence, her fairness, her unyielding resolve. It was a revelation. Authority could exist without domination, respect without terror, and influence without subjugation. Kale's memory lingered like a ghost, sometimes sharp, sometimes muted. She understood that part of her trauma would always remain, a reminder of the dangers of love twisted into possession. Yet she no longer felt fear. Only clarity. Love, she realized, was not about ownership. It was about connection, trust, and mutual respect. The forest became her classroom, her sanctuary, and her proving ground. Every encounter, every challenge, every wolf or human who questioned her autonomy became an opportunity to refine her skills, to assert her presence, and to expand her understanding of what true freedom meant. Luna thrived in the tension between danger and independence, and she relished the knowledge that she was no longer defined by anyone but herself. Freedom was never easy, and the forest never forgiving, but Luna had grown into something formidable. She had escaped, endured, and evolved. The woman who once thought marriage meant forever had learned the bitter truth. Forever could be claimed by no one but herself. And that revelation was intoxicating, terrifying, and utterly liberating. Luna's confidence grew with each passing day, yet the forest remained unpredictable, alive with its own rhythms and secrets. She had learned that control could be fleeting and that power was not simply asserted. It was maintained through constant vigilance. Even Aiden, calm and steadfast, reminded her that danger was never truly gone. It was only waiting for a misstep. It was during one late afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, that a new threat appeared. A group of rogue wolves, unaffiliated with Kale or Verek, encroached on her territory. They were larger, more coordinated than any she had encountered alone, and their eyes glimmered with a challenge she could not ignore. Luna's first instinct was confrontation, but years of survival had taught her strategy. She observed, waited, and learned the rhythm of their movements before acting. Aiden stood beside her, quiet but vigilant. Luna felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, not fear but clarity. She understood now that authority was not won through brute force alone. It was earned through intelligence, foresight, and courage. She gave subtle signals, guiding her small group of loyal wolves with precision. Every choice mattered, every decision could mean survival or defeat. The skirmish was tense and swift. Luna moved with a fluidity that surprised even her, evading attacks, redirecting aggression, and commanding the loyalty of her pack through silent, deliberate cues. By nightfall, the rogue wolves had retreated, cautious and wary, their leader recognizing her as a force not to be underestimated. The forest itself seemed to acknowledge her strength, the wind carrying the faint whispers of respect through the trees. After the encounter, Luna allowed herself a moment of reflection. She had survived Kale, evaded Verek, and now repelled a band of rogues threatening her sanctuary. Each confrontation reinforced a truth she had learned painfully. Freedom was not granted, it was defended, and she alone was responsible for maintaining it. Yet, even in moments of triumph, Luna's thoughts wandered back to love. Aiden's presence was constant, reassuring, yet different from anything she had known with Kale. With him, connection did not demand submission. Desire did not mean surrender. They shared a bond built on trust, respect, and mutual admiration, a partnership, not a hierarchy. And in that bond, Luna discovered a depth of intimacy she had never imagined. The forest became a canvas for their lives. They explored streams hidden beneath canopies, cliffs with breathtaking views, and secret meadows that felt untouched by human or wolf. Each adventure strengthened their bond, yet Luna never lost sight of the dangers surrounding them. The world of alphas and packs was vast, and whispers of her defiance had spread far beyond the forest she called home. News came one evening via a messenger wolf from a distant pack. Kale's influence had not vanished. He had regrouped, consolidating loyalists, and spreading rumors that Luna had been corrupted by freedom. Some saw her as reckless, others as dangerous, and still others as a cautionary tale. Luna listened but did not falter. Her life, her choices, and her love with Aiden were her own, beyond the reach of judgment or control. A new threat arose not from the physical world, but from manipulation and deceit. Varek returned, this time with allies from neighboring packs, offering truce and alliance but expecting submission in return. He spoke with smooth words, the kind that promised power in exchange for loyalty. Luna recognized the danger immediately. Any agreement with him would compromise the autonomy she had fought so hard to reclaim. You cannot lead without alliances, Varek said, eyes calculating, voice persuasive. Even Kale understood that power is fragile alone. I am not Kale, and I do not wish to dominate or be dominated, Luna replied evenly. My strength lies in freedom, my authority in choice. I will not bargain it away. The tension escalated over weeks. Skirmishes and strategic positioning replaced open battles. Luna relied not on raw strength but on foresight, intelligence, and her deep connection with the forest. Wolves under her guidance acted decisively, anticipating moves, defending territory, and maintaining order without her needing to impose fear. Aiden's guidance and support proved invaluable, reinforcing the idea that true partnership is not about control but mutual reliance. Amid the chaos, Luna also discovered subtle aspects of her own identity. The trauma from Kale's marriage had shaped her in ways she was only beginning to understand. Anger, fear, desire, and power intertwined, forging a woman who could navigate complex alliances, fierce battles, and emotional vulnerability with equal skill. She began to understand that freedom was not simply the absence of chains. It was the presence of self, fully realized and unapologetic. One night, under a crescent moon, Luna faced a defining moment. Varek had cornered her with a small faction, expecting submission, expecting fear, expecting her to bend. But Luna had prepared, trained, and embraced her power. She confronted him not with fury but with precision, strategy, and unshakable resolve. The encounter ended not in domination, but in recognition. Varek understood that Luna's autonomy was absolute, her resolve immovable, her presence undeniable. The forest seemed to exhale in relief, the wolves settling into a rhythm that acknowledged her as a true force. Luna felt a surge of satisfaction, tempered with awareness. The path ahead was never without risk, and freedom required constant vigilance. Yet she had endured, evolved, and thrived. She was no longer the naive bride who had thought marriage meant forever. She was a woman who defined forever on her own terms. Aiden, always at her side, became more than a partner. He was a reflection of the life she had chosen, a life of mutual respect, passion, and freedom. Their love flourished in this new context, not as ownership, but as a shared journey. Together they explored, protected, and grew, shaping a future unbound by the chains of past dominions. The controversies of her choices continued to ripple through distant packs. Stories of her defiance, courage, and independence spread far beyond the forest. Some packs respected her wisdom. Others saw her as a dangerous anomaly. Luna did not react to their judgment. She had learned that autonomy was not validated by approval, but by the consistent assertion of one's own will. Through every battle, every alliance, and every quiet reflection, Luna's understanding deepened. Love without respect is destructive. Freedom without vigilance is fleeting. Strength without self-awareness is hollow. She had survived Kale, evaded Varek, and mastered her own life. And in that mastery, she discovered the intoxicating, terrifying, and exhilarating truth of true independence. Months had passed since the last confrontation, but Luna knew the calm of the forest was never permanent. Whispers carried on the wind, rumors of alphas questioning her audacity, tales of a woman who defied domination and thrived. Some came seeking alliances, others seeking to test her resolve, and still others driven by envy or fear. Luna's existence had become a statement: power without control, freedom without submission, love without chains. Aiden remained her constant partner, his presence steady but never commanding. He was a reminder that connection could exist without possession, that desire could flourish without fear, that intimacy could thrive without surrender. Luna found herself laughing more, exploring more, and daring more. Yet she remained vigilant. The forest's shadows were alive with threats she could not ignore. It was during one sun-drenched morning that she encountered the first sign of Kale's return. A lone wolf, bearing the unmistakable scent of the former alpha, approached cautiously, observing her from the tree-line. Luna's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the sharpened awareness of experience. Kale had changed, the memory of him lingering like a storm cloud. Powerful, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. "You've survived," Kale said when he finally stepped into view, voice low and edged with something unspoken. "You've thrived without me." "I am not yours to claim," Luna said firmly. "I never was. I define my own path, my own strength, my own love." Kale's eyes flickered, a mixture of recognition and disbelief. He studied her, as if trying to reconcile the woman before him with the girl he had once dominated. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Wolves shifted uneasily, sensing the tension, caught between memory and allegiance. Varric had not disappeared either. Rumors of his maneuvers in distant territories had reached Luna's ears, hinting that he was consolidating power and plotting a return. The web of politics, dominance, and survival was expanding, forcing her to consider not just immediate safety, but the long-term strategy required to protect herself, Aiden, and the life she had fought to create. Yet Luna's response was different now. She no longer reacted with fear, submission, or panic. She had learned the art of measured defiance, the precision of strategy, the power of alliances forged without compromise of self. She engaged Kale cautiously, testing his intentions, watching his reactions, while simultaneously strengthening bonds with her own pack and allies. "Why do you resist?" Kale asked one evening, voice almost pleading. "I could restore what we had. You could have safety, loyalty, obedience, everything you thought you wanted." "You offered chains," Luna replied, voice steady. "I want freedom. I want love without possession. I want a life that belongs to me alone." Kale's jaw tightened, the flicker of old dominance still present, but no longer absolute. Luna realized that she had grown into a force that even he could not bend without consent. It was a revelation both exhilarating and dangerous. She had become more than Kale could control, and he had no choice but to acknowledge it. Meanwhile, Aiden's presence grounded her. He never sought to dominate, never tried to control, yet his support and insight were invaluable. Together, they navigated threats, strengthened alliances, and expanded their understanding of the forest's power. Luna discovered new skills, tracking, negotiation, even subtle forms of influence, that allowed her to maintain autonomy while securing safety and loyalty. The next confrontation came unexpectedly. A faction loyal to Varric entered her territory, testing boundaries, seeking leverage. Luna confronted them with a combination of strategy and authority, asserting control not through fear, but through precision and intelligence. The battle was swift, decisive, and left her adversaries wary of challenging her again. Each encounter reinforced her understanding that true power was not about dominance. It was about competence, resilience, and unwavering self-possession. In the aftermath, Luna allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She recalled the girl who had believed forever was promised, who had walked willingly into a cage disguised as love. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman tempered by fire, sharpened by betrayal, and strengthened by independence. She had learned that forever is not given. It is earned through courage, choice, and an unyielding refusal to surrender. The forest itself seemed to acknowledge her growth. Wolves who had once wavered in loyalty now followed her confidently, not out of fear, but because they sensed her fairness, intelligence, and strength. Even Kale, watching from a distance, could not deny the transformation. The girl he had controlled was gone. Luna now existed as an entity beyond his reach, a living embodiment of autonomy and power. Love, desire, and connection continued to evolve in her life. Aiden remained her partner, not through control, but through mutual respect and choice. Together they explored not just the forest, but the boundaries of their connection, discovering intimacy, trust, and shared passion that had nothing to do with ownership or dominance. It was a new kind of forever, defined not by chains, but by mutual freedom and unwavering commitment to selfhood. The controversies of her choices, the whispers of defiance, and the legends of her survival continued to spread beyond the forest. Some packs condemned her daring, others celebrated it, and still others approached with curiosity, seeking guidance or alliance. Luna no longer sought approval. She measured her life by her own standards, by the resilience she had cultivated, and by the unwavering assertion of her autonomy. Each day brought new challenges, subtle threats, and opportunities for growth. Luna faced them all with precision, courage, and the clarity of a woman who had reclaimed her life. She understood now that freedom was never passive, that love was never submission, and that strength was not in dominance, but in the unwavering command of one's own choices. By the time the first frost of winter settled over the forest, Luna had not only survived, but she had flourished. She had outlasted Kale, outmaneuvered Varek, and built a life defined by courage, autonomy, and love that demanded nothing but mutual respect. And in the quiet, silvered light of dawn, she understood the ultimate truth. Forever begins with oneself, and every other bond must honor that foundation. Winter settled over the forest like a quiet, watchful sentinel. Snow blanketed the ground, muffling sound and lending a crystalline stillness to the world. Luna moved through it with ease, her senses sharpened by months of survival, her mind alert to every shift in the trees, every whisper of movement. She had grown into a predator and a strategist, tempered by hardship and empowered by freedom. Aiden stayed close, ever vigilant, yet their bond had grown into something deeper than companionship. They had faced danger together, fought side by side, and learned to trust without restraint. Luna realized that love without possession was stronger than any chain. It was a fierce, blazing force, an affirmation of choice, respect, and connection. But even in the quiet of winter, threats emerged. Kale, relentless in his obsession, had not disappeared. Rumors reached her of his movements, the consolidation of a loyal faction, and whispered plans to reclaim what he believed was his. Luna's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the recognition that confrontation was inevitable. She had survived him once. She would survive again, but she would not allow him to define her story. The first encounter came under the pale glow of a frost-bitten moon. Kale appeared at the edge of her territory, the air around him heavy with dominance. His presence a storm she had once trembled before. Wolves shifted nervously, caught between loyalty and recognition of Luna's authority. "You think you've won," Kale said, voice low and dangerous. "You've survived, yes, but you cannot escape what I am. You cannot escape me." "I do not wish to escape you," Luna replied steadily. "I wish to live my life on my own terms. You cannot dictate that anymore." Kale's amber eyes narrowed, his frustration palpable. He had once commanded her, shaped her, defined her existence. Now, facing a woman who refused to bend, he realized the limits of his control. It was a revelation for him, but it was liberation for Luna, a clear, undeniable affirmation of her autonomy. The confrontation escalated into a tense standoff. Wolves from both sides circled cautiously, awaiting the first strike. Luna moved deliberately, not with rage but with precision, asserting authority through awareness, strategy, and unshakable resolve. Aiden was beside her, calm, prepared, a partner without domination, ready to intervene if necessary. In the clash that followed, Luna demonstrated all she had learned: resilience, tactical skill, and the fierce will to protect her freedom. Kale struck with intensity, but Luna countered, using terrain, knowledge of the pack, and her own instincts. The battle was brutal, yet methodical. Every movement was calculated, every decision deliberate. By the time dawn touched the frost-laden trees, Kale had retreated, acknowledging, at least silently, that Luna was no longer a woman he could control. The aftermath was both victorious and sobering. Luna understood that freedom came with responsibility. She had survived, yes, but the forest remained alive with threats, some obvious, others subtle. She had built a sanctuary not through fear or submission, but through competence, intelligence, and courage. Wolves respected her not because she commanded, but because she had earned their trust. Aiden remained her anchor. Together they explored the frozen forest, discovered hidden enclaves, and strengthened the bonds of trust that had always defined their partnership. Love was no longer a dangerous risk. It was a shared choice, an affirmation of independence, and a commitment to mutual respect. Luna felt for the first time that she could embrace desire and connection without fear of chains or dominance. Yet Verek's shadow lingered. He had not vanished, only retreated, plotting in distant territories, his ambitions intact. Luna anticipated his return, prepared with strategies that combined her understanding of wolf dynamics, alliances, and the terrain itself. She realized that independence was not static. It was active, demanding foresight, agility, and unwavering resolve. The coming weeks tested her resolve. Rogue wolves tested boundaries. Whispers of Kale's loyalists stirred unrest, and distant packs probed for alliances or weaknesses. Luna navigated each challenge with a balance of ferocity and intellect, commanding attention without coercion, inspiring loyalty without fear. She had become a leader unlike any alpha she had encountered, strong, uncompromising, yet free of domination. In the quiet moments, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the naive girl who had believed forever meant submission, who had walked into Kale's control without question. That girl no longer existed. Luna was a woman tempered by fire, strengthened by defiance, and defined by her own choices. Freedom, she understood, was a living thing, fragile, demanding, and infinitely precious. Love, too, had transformed. With Aiden, she experienced connection, desire, and intimacy that were choices, not obligations. They explored passion without power dynamics, trust without chains, and intimacy without fear. It was a revelation, a radical affirmation that love could exist without compromise of self. As the forest prepared for the deep winter, Luna's reputation solidified. She became a symbol, a warning, a legend, an inspiration. Some packs questioned her audacity, others admired her courage, and still others sought guidance or alliance. Luna no longer sought validation. She measured life by her own standards, her choices, and her unwavering commitment to autonomy. Every day brought new challenges. Freedom demanded vigilance, courage, and the ability to navigate not only threats of strength but of manipulation, temptation, and deceit. Luna met each test with precision, confidence, and clarity. She had survived Kale, resisted Verek, and thrived where others might have faltered. And through it all, she discovered the ultimate truth. Forever begins with oneself, and every bond, every connection, must honor that foundation. Spring arrived gradually, softening the harsh edges of winter with tender shoots and warm breezes. The forest transformed, reborn in greens and blossoms, yet Luna remained acutely aware that beauty never meant safety. The threats she had faced, Kale, Verek, rogue packs, had not disappeared. They had merely receded, regrouping, waiting for opportunity. Freedom was never granted permanently. It was maintained with vigilance, cunning, and courage. Aiden stayed close as he always had, but their bond deepened in ways Luna had never anticipated. Their connection was no longer forged in survival alone. It had grown into partnership, desire, and trust. She realized she could love fiercely without surrender, desire passionately without fear, and dream of a future without chains. Yet her heart remained wary. Past betrayals had left scars that even the promise of freedom could not entirely erase. It was during one evening, as the sun dipped low, that the forest trembled with tension. Kale appeared, no longer alone. He had returned with a coalition, wolves loyal to him, some seeking power, others seeking the safety they believed he promised. His presence was a storm she had once feared, a hurricane of dominance and expectation, yet Luna did not tremble. She had been forged in fire, and she had learned that survival demanded precision, not panic. "You are mine," Kale said, his voice both soft and menacing. "You were meant for me, and nothing has changed. Nothing will change." "I am no one's possession," Luna replied, her voice steady, carrying through the clearing with authority born of experience. I belong only to myself, and my life is my own. The tension rippled through the assembled wolves. Some hesitated, uncertain where their loyalty should lie. Luna sensed their indecision and used it, her calm presence radiating confidence, her strategies honed over months of trials. Aiden stood beside her, steady and alert, ready to defend but never to dominate. Together they embodied a new model of leadership, authority tempered by respect, influence defined by trust, power wielded with care. The confrontation escalated into a battle of wills and strategy, more than raw strength alone. Kale attacked with ferocity, but Luna's preparation, foresight, and understanding of pack dynamics allowed her to counter effectively. Wolves shifted, blocked, and observed, their allegiance wavering as Luna's presence proved undeniable. Every movement she made was deliberate, every choice strategic. By the first light of dawn, Kale's coalition had fractured, forced to retreat, leaving behind a stark truth. Luna could no longer be controlled, subdued, or claimed. The aftermath brought clarity. The forest, alive with whispers of victory, seemed to acknowledge Luna's transformation. She had survived Kale, outmaneuvered Varek, and navigated rogue threats with skill and precision. Her strength was no longer reactive. It was proactive, deliberate, and grounded in an unshakable understanding of herself. Aiden's hand on hers was a constant reminder of partnership without dominance. Together they explored deeper territories, tested new boundaries, and strengthened their bond. Love had become a sanctuary, not a cage. Desire existed without expectation, passion without surrender. Luna understood now that intimacy could flourish when freedom was respected, and she savored every moment of it. But freedom demanded vigilance. Varek's presence still loomed, subtle yet persistent, whispering rumors, plotting, and testing boundaries from afar. Luna anticipated his return, not with fear, but with careful strategy. She had learned that survival and autonomy were not static. They required constant adjustment, observation, and courage. Over the following weeks, Luna fortified her position, built alliances, and solidified her authority. Wolves followed her not because of fear, but because of trust, respect, and the competence she demonstrated consistently. She had redefined leadership: strength without cruelty, influence without coercion, authority without domination. Every day, every encounter, reinforced her understanding that true freedom was hard-won and fiercely protected. In quiet moments, she reflected on her journey. The girl who had once walked willingly into Kale's control was gone. Luna had emerged tempered, refined, and sovereign. She had learned that forever is not promised. It is claimed through courage, wisdom, and the unyielding refusal to surrender to another's will. The forest, now alive with the fresh energy of spring, became a mirror of her growth. Wolves who had once wavered now followed confidently. Allies trusted her implicitly, and distant packs began to recognize the woman who had defied domination and thrived. Her legend spread not through fear, but through the undeniable reality of her autonomy and skill. Love continued to flourish with Aiden. Their connection was no longer defined by danger or survival. It was defined by choice, respect, and desire. Luna discovered that she could love fully without losing herself, that passion could burn brightly without chains, and that intimacy could exist without compromise. Together they forged a life of adventure, trust, and shared power, a life wholly their own. As the first blooms appeared, Luna understood the ultimate truth she had fought to claim. Freedom is not simply absence of control, but the presence of self-determination. Love is not ownership, but partnership. Strength is not dominance, but mastery over one's own choices. She had survived storms of fury, betrayal, and coercion, and in that survival, she had discovered the intoxicating, terrifying, and exhilarating power of autonomy. The tension in the forest had reached a crescendo. Word of Luna's defiance and mastery had spread far and wide, drawing not only Kale and Varek's attention but also challengers from distant territories. The forest seemed to hold its breath as if it too knew that this would be the ultimate test, not just of strength but of resolve, intelligence, and the very essence of autonomy. Kale returned one last time, his presence a storm of raw emotion, fury, and obsession. His eyes, once amber flames that commanded obedience, now reflected disbelief and desperation. He had rebuilt his influence, consolidated his loyalists, and trained them for dominance. But Luna was no longer the girl he had controlled. She had evolved into a force he could not bend, a woman who understood that strength was not about subjugating others, but commanding oneself. "You've changed," Cale said, voice trembling with a mix of anger and something unspoken. "You think you can survive without me, without my guidance, without me controlling what is yours." "You never controlled me," Luna said, voice steady and sharp, echoing through the clearing. "You only convinced yourself that you did." Mine, Cale. My choices, my life, my strength. It is all mine." Varek appeared at the edge of the clearing, his expression one of calculated interest. He had watched, waited, and plotted, but Luna no longer feared him either. His attempts at coercion were mere whispers in comparison to the clarity she now possessed. Aiden was at her side, steady, calm, unwavering, the anchor that reminded her that connection need not mean compromise. The standoff was electric, a clash of wills that stretched across the clearing. Wolves shifted, circling, observing, uncertain where to place loyalty. Cale and Varek were both formidable, but Luna's power was not borrowed, it was hers. Every movement she made, every decision she enacted, demonstrated control not through fear, but through precision, foresight, and authority rooted in autonomy. Cale lunged, testing her reflexes, but Luna countered effortlessly. She moved with the fluidity of someone who had survived countless storms, her instincts sharpened by betrayal and tempered by experience. Aiden intercepted a strike from Varek's faction, keeping the chaos at bay, allowing Luna to focus entirely on strategy. The fight was brutal but deliberate, a dance of claws, teeth, and instinct tempered by intellect. By nightfall, both Cale and Varek realized the truth they had refused to accept. Luna could not be dominated, bought, or coerced. Her autonomy was absolute, her strength undeniable, her will unyielding. The coalition fractured, and her adversaries retreated, leaving Luna standing at the center of the clearing, victorious not through domination, but through mastery of herself and her environment. The forest seemed to exhale in acknowledgement, the wolves settling into rhythms that mirrored her authority. They followed her not because of fear, but because she had earned their respect through courage, intelligence, and unwavering integrity. Luna's triumph was complete, yet tempered with awareness. Freedom is not static. It must be defended continually. Aiden stepped beside her, his hand brushing hers, a silent affirmation of partnership without chains. They did not need words. The bond they shared was built on respect, trust, and shared experience. Luna allowed herself a rare smile, feeling the full depth of a life reclaimed, love freely given, and power truly earned. In the quiet aftermath, Luna reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The girl who had believed in forever, who had walked into marriage with blind trust, was gone. In her place stood a woman forged by fire, tempered by betrayal, and strengthened by freedom. She had survived domination, navigated conspiracies, outmaneuvered dangerous alphas, and built a life defined entirely by choice. She understood the ultimate truth. Forever begins with oneself. Love exists to enhance, not consume. Strength is measured not by control over others, but mastery of oneself. Desire flourishes in freedom, and connection thrives in trust. Luna had reclaimed her life, her heart, and her destiny, proving that autonomy was the greatest power of all. The first rays of dawn broke through the forest canopy, illuminating the snow-dusted trees and casting Luna in a radiant light. She stood tall, confident, and unshakable, the embodiment of a life won through courage and clarity. Aiden's presence beside her was steady, affirming, and full of shared promise. Together, they would navigate whatever challenges the world still held, but they would do so as equals, partners, and guardians of a freedom hard-won. And in that moment, Luna understood fully. She was no longer a girl who had thought marriage meant forever. She was a woman who knew forever was hers to define, hers to claim, and hers to live on her own terms. The forest, the wolves, and even the distant echoes of former alphas bore witness to her sovereignty. She was unstoppable, unbroken, and utterly free. The story of Luna, once a bride who believed in forever, had transformed into legend. The tale of a woman who refused chains, defied domination, and claimed her life with courage, passion, and unyielding will. And as the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the promise of new adventures and challenges, Luna stepped forward into her future, unbound, unafraid, and entirely her own. To watch more audiobooks, kindly subscribe to this channel. Also, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comment section.